Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Music Made Me. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We truly appreciate the support. Today we have an awesome conversation with former Finger11 and Saint Asonia drummer Rich Beddoe. He has had a very interesting journey throughout his musical career, and this conversation went so far beyond music to the difficult discussion of addiction. Rich actually struggled with addiction throughout his career in his time with Finger11 and his time with Saint Asonia, and it's actually the reason why he left the music business for a number of years. But he's back now, stronger and healthier than ever with rock band No Resolve, and he's ready to tell his story in the hopes of helping and supporting and inspiring others who may be struggling with addiction. So please enjoy our conversation with drummer Rich Beddoe. Let's start from the beginning, the very beginning, and talk about the Thriller album and what that meant for you as a youngster getting into music.
The Thriller album.
Yeah.
Man, that was a massive album in my life. It's funny you mentioned that. That was the first record that my whole family listened to. When that video came out for Thriller, we rented the Betamax, or didn't rent it, we bought the Betamax tape and watched it over and over again. And then I discovered the Jackson 5 from there. And yeah, Thriller album was huge. I mean, every song on that is so good.
So without dating yourself, how old were you when that happened?
I don't know. Well, I'm 44, so I don't mind dating my man, I don't know. I don't even know.
Right, but a young kid. So was that sort of your first memory of feeling that vibe towards music and having that positive feeling when you heard it?
Yeah, it would have been for sure. I mean, my parents, I was born in Wales in Britain, so we moved over to Canada when I was 3. So in my house, there was a lot of Elvis. My parents loved Elvis and a lot of Beatles.
Oh, okay.
But I'd say my earliest memory is Elvis, like driving around and listening to it. My dad, looking back, I didn't realize it at the time, but he totally had the Elvis hair. It'd be like someone now in their, I don't know who they would try to look like, but it was like, that was the look back then that everyone had. I guess like a mohawk now, you know?
Right, yeah.
But, so yeah, it was that. And then when Thriller came out, it was massive in my whole family's life, to the point where, I mean, I had a jacket, like the Beat It jacket, and I had a glove. So it was huge for sure. And I don't know if I was necessarily listening to the drums back then. I think it was just like Michael Jackson I was obsessed with, like everyone else.
Do you remember seeing him as a star and thinking, I want to do that? That's what I want to do?
I don't remember if back then I had that dream. I don't recall because I was so young, but I think I was just infatuated with him. I don't know if I would have thought back then that you ever could have reached that. I mean, he was almost in my child mind like a god, So I don't know if I ever listened to him or thought of him and, imagined myself being like that. I don't think so. I mean, maybe I did, but.
Right. And being born in Wales, when did you move to Canada?
I was 3.5 when I moved there. I moved to Edmonton originally. So
okay.
It's cool because later in life I got to play there, and we got to play a big hockey arena in the town I was born in called Cardiff. And
okay.
We were there with Evanescence. So it was cool because I had the day off the next day. And the day of the show, all my cousins and stuff came to the show. And Amy from Evanescence she like stocked her dressing room with alcohol. And she basically gave it to me for the night. And she's like, here, I know your family's here. So I got to like host all these cousins that I didn't really know. And then the next day, my grandfather picked me up, or I call him Grampy. He picked me up and I got to go to my old town where I grew up. And like, I just sat all night with him and sipped on whiskey, and we just talked as adults. And I wish my brother and sister had that chance. He passed away not long after that. So it was really cool to be able to get that memory with him,
Wow, that's awesome. And talk about when you're 9 and you start taking drum lessons. Before that, were you a drummer at heart? Were you the kind of guy that was constantly around the house banging on stuff and at the dinner table using your utensils and banging on the plates and stuff?
Yeah, it started with Animal on the Muppet Show. And I do remember I wanted to be him so bad. When my family were watching TV, I would like perch myself on the couch and I would talk like Animal. And my mom and dad would get so mad. I don't even know how Animal talks anymore, but I would just act like a little monster. And the idea of having drums, I had a cardboard drum set I made. And then I remember my brother's girlfriend brought me some drumsticks. They were the first drumsticks I had.
Oh, okay.
So, and my parents didn't let me get drums until quite a few years later. I had to take lessons for a couple of years because, before that I was a skateboarding guy.
Okay.
I wanted to be a skateboarder. So they wanted to wait until I was they knew I was into it long enough before they bought an expensive drum set.
Talk about the left-handed part and the fact that came about just because your instructor, when you took drum lessons, was left-handed, right?
Yeah. How do you know all this stuff?
Research.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm still friends with him. He's the drummer for Platinum Blonde now.
Oh, okay.
You know that? They were like in the 80s. There was like Honeymoon Suite, Platinum Blonde, Glass Tiger.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also friends with Alan from Glass Tiger now, but his name's Dan Todd, and he was my drum teacher. But the first day I went to lessons with him, he's left-handed, so I didn't know any different. So I just learned that way. And it wasn't until quite a while later when I was inside the music store and I saw someone else drumming. I'm like, man, why does that look so different? And I realized I'm the different one being a lefty. So.
And when did you actually, at 14, was that your first band, Alliance?
Yeah. Yep. Alliance.
How did that come about?
There was a girl in grade 7 named Angie. It's amazing I can remember these names. Angie Ayers. And she knew I was a drummer and I was so into it. I was bringing drumsticks to school and everything. And so she said that her brother and his friend had a band and they were looking for a drummer. So they were all in high school at that point. So it was like, wow, these older guys. And they all came over to my house. The two of them came to my house with these little amps. And the first song we ever played was For Whom the Bells Toll by Metallica. And I knew the whole thing. And it's like they were so excited that they'd never jammed with a drummer that knew those parts. I guess they had a drummer before me, wasn't very good, or not that I was good back then, but I knew the parts of that song. And so they were, so excited about it. And I was excited to play with the real guitar players. Then we did Seek and Destroy. It was all Metallica back then. So yeah, I started playing with that band and they were, I think, in 10th grade at that point, and I was in 7th. So it was cool. They were like the older guys. And then when I got to high school, they were graduating. So, all through high school, I didn't really, there was really no parties and stuff for me. Because once those guys graduated, we rehearsed like 7 days a week and we were, writing songs, and we really had that dream of getting a record deal. So I did that every day, went to my little rehearsal hall with the guys and we wrote, all through 9th grade to 12th grade. And then beyond.
So that band, then, that lasted quite a while. That just wasn't some high school fling. That was a band that wanted to make it work. It wasn't just hey, we're in high school, let's play some music and have a band. It was, we want to play music and we want to try and get somewhere with it.
Yeah, and it went into, after high school, everyone was so serious about it, these 4 guys. And we hardly played any shows. At that point, we got this manager, and all we wanted to do was go play. And at that point, we'd hired this bass player, join the band. Not hired, he joined the band. And he wanted to write songs, and he had this whole vision of the band not doing cover songs and like just focusing on writing. And all of us just wanted to go and play like all the bars. So we didn't do that. We just played maybe 2 or 3 shows our whole, the whole life of Alliance, and just wrote a bunch of songs. And I still have all the songs. They sent it to me a few years ago. And it's cool to think it's like, it's horrible, but it's cool that we were doing that at that age. We were really trying to write. And back then we were really into Queensryche. And so it's somewhat proggy. And the vocals are kind of like 80s metal, but yeah, it was cool, man. And then eventually I remember quitting that band. I can't remember why, but but it was a lot of years I was with them, and they're still my dear friends, all of them.
And if you weren't playing many shows, how did that help in your musical development? Because if you were practicing that much and writing that much, did that really help in your development throughout high school and becoming the musician that you are?
It did, in the sense, I guess, that you know trying to create your own parts, just being creative, and I was always a big part of the writing, you know, the lyrics and melodies and just the structure of the song. So, I mean, of course, it was probably all inspired by bands I listened to, but it was definitely cool to, where I became as a musician, that to think back that I was actually trying to arrange songs and, come up with cool drum parts. So it definitely was, an important thing into my life for sure as a drummer.
And from when you quit that band to when you joined Finger11, what was that transition like? Was there other bands in there, or did you just spend some time away from a band before you went into Finger11?
Yeah, there was a band for years and years. I guess that thought of always wanting to play bars finally came to fruition because there was a band in Hamilton called the General Lee, and we started playing. I mean, we played 6 nights a week all around Ontario. We became like a real working cover band.
Oh, okay.
We had 60 songs in our arsenal. So I did that for quite a few years. I moved to Hamilton, and those guys were my band forever, the General Lee, and they continued after me. And again, those guys are all my friends too. But that was a good way to, start playing in front of people and getting those nerves out. That was my real first experience with that. And then after that, through playing with that cover band, a guy named Carl one day was filling in on bass and said, "Hey, you know that band, the Rainbow Butt Monkeys? They're looking for a drummer." And I'm not sure how I got a contact number, but I auditioned, but I thought I was learning all Rainbow Butt Monkey songs. It turned out they'd already changed their name and already had a record out, and I had no idea. So I learned all those songs, and like a day before, realized, oh no, I gotta learn all this, and they're not called the Rainbow Butt Monkeys anymore.
That was a good thing to know before going in, hey?
Yeah, I learned like a few songs for the first audition, and back then it was so exciting to me because I thought, the dream of having a record deal and all those thoughts when I was young, I used to sit at shows I didn't even have tickets for and just watch tour buses outside and just imagine what it's like to travel like that. And even things like drum risers, like it's so cool to have your drums up high on a stage. And I was just fantasized about every bit of a touring musician. So I sort of was under the impression that those guys were like that. To my surprise, I found out they had just lost their record deal when I joined, and there was nothing going on with them except they were shopping the Finger11 record to new record companies in the States.
Right.
So because I got to experience that whole, record companies whining and dining us, trying to sign it. There was like 6 labels that wanted us. So that was a really cool part of the history to, experience that, like literally getting a record deal I was there for, which I'm really glad I got to experience.
Right. And before you joined Finger11, when did you develop your style? Because I'm a recreational drummer and I've always loved your style, like that sort of glitchy arms waving all over the place style. When did that form? Was it before Finger11?
Well, thank you for saying it. I think that just the way, after so many years I just started playing was probably because of anxiety of playing. I would get really nervous, and I found it was easier to almost become a different person, which later I'd call, or other people would say, is like Mr. Hyde. They'd call me Hyde when I was on stage. Really just a way to calm my nerves down. It's like this guy right here wasn't even going up there. As soon as I was going to play, it's almost like Animal from the Muppet Show. I'd go back to that frame of mind, and just over time, I don't know, that became the thing I kind of felt comfortable doing on stage. And it just became, you could tell people enjoyed it. So yeah, I don't know. It's fun and you're feeling it in the moment, but it was definitely originated just from being scared to be this guy when I was playing. I'd rather, easier to be someone else.
Right.
If someone
And
look video of me, I'd be like, oh my God, what am I doing?
and you talk about wanting to be someone else. Now let's talk about the drinking and being someone else. And when did that come in your Finger11 days? Was it pretty early on when you joined the band?
Yeah. Even though I look back on those days and, I realized my alcoholism and drug addiction definitely ramped up as I got older. But yeah, drinking was always a big thing in the band. Other bands knew us as the drinking guys. And a few of us were like the party guys. Scott, the singer of the band, never, because he had to sing the next day, was never really the guy going out. But me and James and Rick were always, back then we'd be out till 7 a.m. and that's easy to do when you're 22,
Yeah.
jump in our van and go to the next city. But it got increasingly more, I think, dark, I'd call it, when I was like blacking out. And even when the guys were starting to, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd have to always come out of my bunk and sort of scan the room and see, because I wouldn't remember what I did. So I would have to kind of wait and see by their body language if I did something crazy the night before.
Right.
And it was like that every night. And then on top of that, I was like secretly at home starting to use cocaine, which they didn't know about at the time. So I was like already sneaking drugs and blacking out. And, it was just a recipe for disaster over time. It was.
And you quit your drinking before leaving Finger11, right?
I quit drinking when I got married. And at that point, is when I started like secretly using prescription pills. And what I should have done back then, now, of course, in hindsight, you realize, but I should have started going to a program, or I didn't really know how to be social without drinking, because that's all I did. So I guess I was looking for a way to alter my mind some way. And it started with, what are they called? You had like light painkillers, and then it eventually got up to Oxycontin, which is what's killing everyone now. And I like heavily addicted to it, which is so easy to do with that drug. And it's basically like, it's an opiate. It's like the same as heroin as far as the withdrawal and stuff. So I became using it daily just to not get sick. And again, I was still in the band at that time, so I had all these secrets.
Right.
And I think they knew there were secrets, because when you look back, you realize everyone else knew. You think you're hiding it so well, but I'm sure they knew, maybe not specifically, and it was the start of my decline, I think, so, and then I didn't drink for a while, for quite a few years, but that's when drug use started becoming more and more into my life.
And how did it affect things, like especially on stage? Like, were you taking them during a show? Like, were you on them during a show, or was it more like the after parties and after the shows?
It got to the point where I didn't feel anything from them. I just needed to take them to not feel sick
Oh, okay.
all the time. And I think the last tour I did with them, or one of the last ones, was with Papa Roach. And I didn't have any. And I mean, I'm not even sure if the guys know this, but I hope they know. But that's why I like talking about this stuff, to be honest. But I was withdrawing from them on that tour. So imagine being completely sick, where your bones hurt, you're sweating, and then every night you have to go out and play in front of thousands of people. It was a nightmare. But of course, I got through that. And as soon as I came home, I got more and kept it going. So.
And how did it affect your time with Finger11 and just your memory of your time with the band?
The last year or so, of course, when this all happened originally, like right after, I was very defensive about what happened. And, I was angry at them. And then Saint Asonia, I was like, I'm in this band now, and, fuck those guys. But it affected everything. And it affected how they were viewing me as friends, how we were communicating. And I thought I was hiding it all. So I just thought they were increasingly getting more distant from me but really it was me getting more distant from them.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just something that you only can really know when you look back on. But it's great now that I can take full responsibility for it and accountability. And by doing that, it's just so freeing, you know? And so whenever I do any kind of interviews now, I really like to be honest about it, because maybe, you know, if I could help maybe one person out there, you know, maybe some young drummer or something to try to avoid some of that stuff, you know, hopefully I can. So yeah, I thought I was hiding it, and it inevitably, you know, took me out of being in the band. Luckily, I was to the next one, but that was luck.
Right. And there was a time, I believe it was with Finger11, that you were in Australia, and there was a newspaper clipping of the fact that the band went up the bridge, the Sydney Bridge. And the article was actually about you being intoxicated, and I can't remember if it was you weren't able to get up the bridge, or they were saying it was a miracle you actually were able to get up the bridge because you were intoxicated.
Before you climb the bridge, you have to do a breathalyzer, because I mean it's huge,
Right.
and you're strapped and everything, but for safety reasons, you have to do a breathalyzer. And you know, it was, I think, the day before. Maybe we had a day off or something, but we were all drunk as hell. And then like 8 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up and walk over to the bridge with James and do this. So you have to do kind of like a safety thing. And then they're like, okay, before we start, blow into this. And I blew way over. So this was the next day, the next morning. So I had to go later. They're like, you can come back. So I think I went back at like 9 o'clock at night because I wanted to still have that experience. But the record company at the time, I think it was Sony Records over there, I think they were just trying to get a story for the band, you know, some sort of press.
Right.
So the next morning after that, I came down to the lobby, and I think it was Amy Lee from Evanescence had the paper, and she showed me this little thing. You know, it was just a little thing in the entertainment section, not big, but you know, I thought it was amazing at the time, like that I made the paper.
Well, that's the thing I was going to ask. Like, it wasn't like a feeling of shame. It was more a feeling of, I'm a rock star and this is what I do, right?
Yeah, at the time, for sure. I was proud of it. Again, like most of my stories, I look back. I wouldn't say shame. I mean, it was a fun thing, and I was younger, and I mean, I don't know how I feel. When I look back, I just think I could have had way more fun and memories had I have been in a different state of mind, you know, for a lot of tours. But it's also just the lifestyle on the road. I mean, it is hard for anyone to not live in that kind of drinking world, especially when you're someone that doesn't realize that you have a disease of alcoholism. You know, it's just a matter of time.
Right. And now when you made the move over from Finger11 to Saint Asonia, was it because Adam had sort of approached you, or were you at the time withdrawing from Finger11 and looking for something different?
No, not necessarily. I moved into a condo in Toronto, and it turned out that Adam was basically my neighbor across the street. And I had heard he just quit 3 Days Grace. And those guys have all been friends with, you know, us guys in Finger11 for years. So I think I just contacted him, reached out, and like, hey man, is everything okay? Because at the time it seemed crazy to quit a band at their success. But I do remember feeling, I was getting so angry with a couple of the guys in Finger11. I was feeling like already that, fuck that, you know, if something comes up, man, I'm going to do something else. And me and Adam started talking, and it was, you know, he was looking to start a new thing. And then of course, because we lived so close to each other, we became closer friends, hanging out all the time. And that mentally was pulling me away from, you know, it's kind of like the last straw from everything going on with Finger11. Once I knew I could do something else, there wasn't a fear of the unknown. I really felt like I could just jump into something in some ways more successful because of Adam's success.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, already I was in such a horrible state of mind that I can't say I was thinking any rational decisions back then. I was just coasting, and thank God, by luck, I was able to start Saint Asonia with Adam. But, you know, it was just really luck that came along.
Yeah. What what state were you in at that time? Was it the meth that you were on when you joined?
Yeah, that's when I was secretly started doing meth. I'd started drinking again as well. Then I was hiding that from Adam at the time. So everything I was doing was a secret. Um, so my marriage was falling apart. My mental state was crazy. I mean, my whole personality changed because I'd be up for days. Physically, I looked much different. I lost all this weight. And I mean, there's a lot of things I think back on how I acted. And literally, I was insane for a while. I was not I wasn't a sane person. So that was the start of, yeah, using like methamphetamines, all like from the very beginning of Saint Asonia. And it's sort of, that was throughout the whole career, that was sort of the thing I was secretly hiding, and unfortunately led to my dismissal from the band, even though that was a blessing to happen. But yeah, the drug use was out of control by that point, where I was taking it, to Europe with me. If you got arrested, imagine being somewhere in Europe and getting arrested with drugs, or Russia. So it became the only thing that mattered to me. And the example I always use to like tell people the level that it got to. And again, I can talk about this because I just want to be honest about it. It's really nothing to hide anymore. And it's, again, if it can help someone. But when I went to Europe, we were opening for Motley Crue on their final tour. And, I grew up loving Motley Crue, one of my favorite bands. And the first day of the tour at Wembley Arena in London, as soon as we were done playing, I went and found a bathroom down, the basement of the arena, and I was doing drugs. And I could just hear like Shout at the Devil from the distance. And it's like, that didn't even matter to me. The first night of tour, all that matters was me doing that stuff by myself. And so that just shows you where I was and what was important to me. It sucks, man, but it's just where I was at the time.
Going into off the first album with Saint Asonia and them going into the second album and basically firing you, if that hadn't have happened, where do you think you would be at this point? Would you have gotten help at some point, do you think, or would the spiral just have continued?
I would imagine I wouldn't have been alive by now. There was a time where my marriage had fallen apart as well due to my behavior, of course. Um, I was in such a dark place at the time that, I specifically remember I didn't remember the last time I'd been happy. All I knew was, anger, shame, hate, embarrassment. And I was in such a dark place that, if I hadn't have had someone or those guys stop me, I don't know, I don't know how I could have lived at the rate I was going. So, I mean, they didn't know that I was necessarily doing what I was doing, but looking back, talking to those guys now, they knew something was going on. I was a nightmare to be in. So.
And what was the first step to you to getting help after all that time and after hiding it for so long? How difficult was it, and what was the first step to recovery?
It was, excuse me, it got almost it got worse after that. Then I thought really my life was over. Because everything at the time, everything that defined me was being a drummer in a band. I didn't know how to think of myself as just rich. So I thought by not having that, that job, that there was nothing left. So I kind of spun out of control to a darker place. Luckily, at that point, I'd met my girlfriend, my wife at the time. I started coming down here to Michigan a lot. And just sort of because I couldn't get it, I kind of stopped doing drugs as much. But then, of course, being an addict, if I couldn't do one thing, I have to do the other. So then I got into being a blackout drunk again. So luckily, the drug stuff just sort of ended just because I wasn't near it anymore. But because I could never be in a normal, sober state of mind, that's when I got really dark into drinking, and just a horrible person to be with, in complete denial for why I got fired. It was everybody else's fault. I got fucked over. I was angry with Adam in particular. And yeah, that's where I was at the time. And I don't know where it stopped. I guess going to rehab or hitting rock bottom is finally, where you got to go before there's nowhere else to go, but up.
And so what was the moment, that rock bottom moment where it was like, okay, this is it. Like I need to get help.
Getting arrested. Getting arrested. Yeah. Going to jail for just for a couple days. Yeah, that was really it. There was just, I was down here, I didn't have a job, and then I ended up being drunk and getting arrested. It got to the point where, again, Sarah was just my girlfriend at the time, where, she said to me, my family said to me, man, you need to get help. And I guess at that point, I just had enough. There was nowhere else to go. So the idea of going to rehab was, I was actually excited about it. I was ready for that change, because I don't know, it was complete rock bottom for me.
And now you're married, you have a new son, you have two stepkids, is it?
Yep.
What, what is that like, that complete turnaround? How long has it been since you've been sober? A year or more? Or no, because you've been married more than a year, right?
Yeah, but I had a few relapses of drinking along the way. So, yeah, it's been a long time now, but it's this lifestyle now. I couldn't have stayed sober without first having my stepkids. There's someone screaming in the back of my baby. But just the normality of my life, I really needed to get off the road, to cook dinner for my family every night. To be in this environment was so necessary. Again, because my actions back then were really insane. I was insane. So I needed to get sane. And another way I did that was after I got arrested, I needed to go to psych ward because of my behavior. And it was there I was diagnosed as having a pretty extreme bipolar, which I fought. And that my wife knew it. Everyone kind of knew it by by all my behaviors over the years. But when I finally settled to the idea that I had it, it made so much more sense, all these things. Of course, I am still an addict and always will be, but some of my impulsive behaviors, I can, sort of say, well, that comes along with that, bipolar state of mind. And some of the depression sort of comes along with that bipolar stuff too. So it was sort of freeing to know that I was bipolar and I got medicated for it. And so it's not just rehab and programs that keep me sober. It's all, for a lot of people, it's a mental health thing.
Right.
Those come hand in hand with sobriety. So it all just happened at once in such a great way where, rehab, figuring out some mental health stuff and, and wanting to fix it.
And now you have the new project, No Resolve. What is your mindset going into that? Because like you said, when you left Saint Asonia, you were in the mindset of, if I'm not a drummer, then who am I? So going into this new project, do you really have a different outlook on it and a different mindset of, this band isn't going to define me?
Yeah, 100%. For a couple of years, I wanted nothing to do with drumming. I didn't pick up, a pair of drumsticks. I just didn't have any inspiration to play, which worried me because that's all I ever had. All I ever wanted to do was that. And for a while, I thought it was gone. And I kind of accepted it for a while. I think, looking into that, that's sort of a blessing that happened. So I could focus on myself, my family, my sobriety. And, of course, as I thought would happen, once I got into that state of mind, it started coming back. I started wanting to play again, actually playing again, setting up my drums and playing, and listening to music. I mean, I didn't listen to music for such a long time. I was just listening to podcasts, starting to play records again. And these guys in No Resolve just came at the perfect sort of chapter of my re-beginning again into music. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to play with them, but they're somewhat local in Detroit. And my wife had done a video of them like a year before. So she had done a video, and that's how I started to know the guys, and in particular Oscar, their singer. And we just kind of stayed in touch over that year. And I think the first thing that happened was they needed a drummer for a video.
Oh, okay.
They just wanted me to video, which was Never Back Down, the first single. And it was at that video shoot, they sat me down and were, said, how do you feel about being in this band? We understand what you've gone through. We want to support you. What do you think? And it took me maybe a couple weeks to think about it, but I really, after a while, it was exciting again, the idea of playing and doing something fresh. And it's been awesome ever since. Those guys are such cool guys. The songs, there's a lot of cool stuff happening this year. I'm just inspired again, to play, and it's awesome, man. All of this stuff that's happened now all makes sense. It's all happened for a reason.
Right.
And, it's come full circle, but this time I'm so much happier. I got a new lease on life. I have a son, I have a wife, it's just, everything has really turned around for me. Thank God.
And what outlook are you taking with the new band? Do you want to be someone who is a leader and can help guide them with your experience? Or are you at the point where you just want to sort of sit back and, give them the help of what you've experienced in the industry to help them move along, but just kind of sit back and do your thing?
Well, I just think naturally, because of the, more experience and kind of stuff that's happened with me in my career, I have opinions about certain things that maybe are just the first thing that's happened to them. These might be things that I've gone through a couple of times. And it's really just the friendship of us too. I mean, there's no real leader type thing. It's just really open communication. And those guys, ask, my advice or just my opinion on stuff. And I love that their opinions and the way they're going about stuff business-wise is so different than I would have done in the past. It's not about record sales anymore. It's all about streaming and Spotify and YouTube. And all that stuff's kind of confusing to me. I'm kind of old school guy. So these guys are really on top of all that. And it's amazing, the way that all these bands are getting out there now. Back in the day, you have to get a record deal. They'd have to distribute your record. You owed a bunch of money. And I mean, now you could record a song. Studios are so much cheaper. You can record something that sounds great. And the next day, someone in China could be listening to it. It's crazy, man. So I think it took a few years for the record industry, the entertainment industry to sort of figure out how to do this and be able to make some money because it is, people do have to survive at this. And for a while there, I think everyone, record companies were going out of business. Bands were, breaking up because there was just no income coming in.
Right.
Tickets got more expensive to go see bands, which sucked for the people going and buying tickets. So the whole thing was tough for a few years, but I think now with streaming getting figured out, it's sort of coming back in a way that I could never have imagined. And the guys in this band are really on it. So it's cool, man. They're teaching me a lot of stuff.
And when you look back, like looking over your social media, it's just crazy for a fan like me to see what you've been able to do, who you've been able to hang out with, the shows you've been able to play, the countries you've been able to travel to, the venues you've been able to play at. When you look back on it, what's your thought at this point in your life?
Man, I feel I don't take any of it for granted, which I probably did for a while. It's such a blessing, the career that I've had so far. I've met such great people. The thing about especially rock bands is there's such a brotherhood with people and especially Canadian rock bands,
Right.
I'm friends with so many guys over this last few years have stayed in touch with me and being supportive, as well as people and fans or whatever around the world. And it's awesome. I've made some real great friends, and you also kind of learn along the way, maybe who weren't your friends, and you kind of learn what's important. And I think now in sobriety and recovery, I've made so many more friends in the music industry than I ever had before. And I probably had met and hung out with more people back then, but now I have real relationships with people. People call me from, other bands, successful bands or not, and ask how I'm doing daily and really are asking me and really care. And I don't think I've ever had that before, even with my own band members. which is pretty wild. So there's a whole new world of musicians that sort of have gone through it like I have and are now sober way more than I would have thought. And yeah, the difference is, like I was saying, is these people all, you know, there's sort of a relationship there that only we have. And it's awesome, man. It's the friendships that I've made in the last, you know, year or so have been some of the best friends I've ever had in my life. And it's all through that community, you know? So this whole journey that I've been on has been a dark one, a bright one, an amazing one, you know, a horrible one. But it's amazing looking back now at how important each chapter has been to get me here. I don't regret anything, you know, and I wouldn't do anything different because it wouldn't be me talking to you right now. Of course, you just got to let things go. You know, the past is the past. And by talking about it like this, it's, you know, you don't let it have power or control over you. You sort of let it go. The more I talk about this stuff, the freer I am of it. So, you know, I hope in the future I want to keep doing music and playing and touring. But I really think this kind of new me is I want to be involved in recovery and whatever I can do, you know, whether it's musicians or other people, go around and speak to people, which I've done so far, and like some rehabs and stuff. This journey that I'm on right now is as important as the drum career. You know, letting people know about the stuff that I've gone through and trying to help.
Thank you guys so much once again for listening, and thank you to Rich for telling his story in such a real and honest way. Now, please make sure you are sharing, following, liking, subscribing to us on whatever streaming service you are listening on, and be sure to join us next time on The Music Made Me. Thanks, and we'll see you then.